There's a plant on your windowsill that's doing something right now. Something so slow you almost can't see it. But if you took a photo today and another one in 2 weeks, the difference would be unmistakable. It's leaning, tilting, the whole body of the plant curving toward the glass like it's trying to press its face against the window. You've noticed. Everyone notices. And everyone says the same thing, and it needs more light. Move it closer, rotate it, give it what it's reaching for. But what if the lean isn't a cry for help? What if it's something else entirely? Something that reveals how a plant without a brain, without eyes, without a single neuron, makes spatial decisions in real time. Because the psychology behind that lean, the actual decision-making architecture driving it, is one of the most underappreciated feats of biological intelligence on the planet. And almost everything the average person believes about why it happens is incomplete. Let's start with the thing everybody gets right, and then go deeper than you've ever been taken on this topic. Yes, your plant grows toward light. The mechanism is called phototropism, and it was first documented by Charles Darwin in 1880. Darwin showed that the tip of a grass seedling was the part sensing the light, even though the bending happened lower down. Something at the top was perceiving direction and sending instructions below. 46 years later, Dutch botanist Frits Wendt identified the messenger, a hormone called auxin. And auxin's role in phototropism is elegant in its simplicity. When light hits one side of a stem, auxin migrates to the opposite, the shaded side. More auxin means faster cell elongation on that side. The cells on the dark side stretch longer. The stem curves. Your plant doesn't move toward the light. One side outgrows the other. The lean is differential growth, not movement. That distinction matters, but here's the part that phototropism alone doesn't explain. And this is where the psychology begins. If phototropism were the whole story, every plant in every window would lean the same way, at the same rate, with the same intensity. They don't. Some lean hard, some lean gently. Some barely lean at all, even in strongly directional light. And some lean toward the window even when the light coming through it is objectively insufficient for their needs. A 2018 study published in Current Biology by researchers at the University of Lausanne uncovered why. Phototropism doesn't operate in isolation. It's in constant negotiation with a second spatial sensing system, gravitropism. Your plant senses gravity using specialized cells called statocytes, which contain dense starch granules called statoliths. These granules settle to the bottom of the cell like sand in an hourglass, telling the plant which direction is down. The lean you see on your windowsill is not a simple response to light. It's the computed output of two competing directional signals, light pulling sideways, gravity pulling down, filtered through a hormonal mediation system that weighs the relative strength of each. Your plant is not reaching, it's negotiating, and the negotiation is more sophisticated than it appears. A research team at the University of Würzburg published a study in Nature Communications in 2020 that mapped the auxin transport proteins, called PIN proteins, responsible for directing auxin flow within the stem. These proteins don't just sit there passively. They actively reposition themselves within each cell membrane in response to both light and gravity signals, redirecting auxin flow like switches in a rail yard. The plant's lean is not a reflex, it's the product of a continuously updated intracellular logistics network. PIN proteins shift. Auxin gradients change. Cell elongation rates adjust. The angle of the lean is recalculated not once, but constantly. As light conditions change throughout the day, this is real-time spatial computation. Without a processor, without a circuit board, without a neuron. Now here's where it gets genuinely psychological. Because the lean isn't just about maximizing light capture, it's about something deeper. Risk management. A 2019 study published in Plant, Cell and Environment by researchers at the Australian National University measured the metabolic cost of phototropic bending. Bending a stem requires cell wall remodeling, new protein synthesis, and sustained hormone transport. All energy-expensive processes. The researchers found that plants only commit to strong phototropic responses when the potential photosynthetic gain exceeds the energy cost of bending by a measurable margin. Below that threshold, the plant stays relatively straight. It doesn't invest. This means your plant is running a cost-benefit analysis, not metaphorically, biochemically. It's evaluating. Is the light differential between my lit side and my shaded side large enough to justify the metabolic expense of asymmetric growth? and this calculation is modulated by the plant's current energy reserves. A 2021 study from the Max Planck Institute for Plant Biology found that plants with depleted starch reserves, their stored energy, showed weaker phototropic responses even under strong directional light. They couldn't afford the investment. They stayed straight even when bending would have been beneficial, and because they didn't have the budget. Your plant doesn't just decide whether to lean, it decides whether it can afford to. This is not reflexive behavior. This is context-dependent resource allocation. In cognitive science, when an animal adjusts its behavior based on internal state and external conditions, we call it adaptive decision-making. When a plant does the same thing, we tend to call it biology, but the functional architecture is remarkably similar. Let's push further. Because the lean toward the window involves something most people have never considered: prediction. A 2016 paper published in Trends in Plant Science by researchers at the University of Tübingen proposed a framework they called anticipatory behavior in plants. They documented that plants don't just respond to current light conditions. They adjust growth patterns in anticipation of future conditions based on temporal cues. The most well-known example is the way sunflowers track the sun across the sky during the day, a behavior driven by differential growth rates on opposite sides of the stem. But what the researchers found is that even after the sunflower matures and the tracking stops, the stem remains oriented eastward, toward the sunrise, because this orientation warms the flower faster in the morning, attracting more pollinators. The mature sunflower isn't tracking light anymore, it's positioned based on a prediction about where the light will come from tomorrow morning. Your houseplant on the windowsill isn't a sunflower, but the underlying mechanism, circadian modulated growth patterns that integrate past light experience with anticipated future light, operates across species. Research at the University of Cambridge demonstrated that Arabidopsis thaliana adjusts its growth angle based not just on current light direction, but on the consistency of that light over previous days. A plant that has received consistent directional light for a week shows a more committed lean than a plant exposed to the same intensity for one day. The lean deepens with experience. The plant integrates light history into its spatial decision-making. In cognitive psychology, we'd call this temporal integration, the use of accumulated past experience to modulate current behavior. When a human makes a decision based on consistent past patterns, we call it learning. When a plant does it, we call it acclimation. But the mathematical structure, weighting past signals to predict future conditions, is fundamentally the same. Now I want to address something that sits at the uncomfortable edge of this topic, the word psychology in the title of this video. Can we genuinely talk about plant psychology? A 2020 review published in the Annual Review of Plant Biology used the term distributed intelligence to describe plant decision-making. No central brain, no nervous system, but a network of cells that sense, integrate, and respond to environmental stimuli with a level of coordination that challenges the boundary between cognition and chemistry. A separate 2022 paper in Trends in Plant Science by researchers at the University of Bonn went further, asking whether plants exhibit minimal cognition, defined as the ability to process information from the environment and generate adaptive responses that cannot be fully explained by simple stimulus-response reflexes. The scientific community is divided on the terminology, but not on the data. The data consistently shows that plants integrate multiple environmental signals, weigh costs and benefits, modulate responses based on internal state, incorporate past experience, and produce outputs that optimize fitness under uncertainty. Whether you call that psychology is a question of language, whether you respect it as sophisticated biological problem-solving, is a question of evidence, and the evidence is overwhelming. Let me bring all of this together by taking you back to the plant on your windowsill. That lean, that quiet, persistent curve toward the glass, is not a simple phototropic reflex. Here's what's actually happening. Phototropin proteins in the stem cells detect the angle of incoming light with compass-like precision. This directional signal is integrated with gravitropic input from statocytes containing statolith granules. The integrated signal is translated into asymmetric auxin distribution via actively repositioned pin transport proteins. The shaded side elongates faster, producing the visible curve. The degree of curvature is modulated by a cost-benefit calculation that accounts for the energy expense of bending versus the potential photosynthetic return. That calculation is further modulated by the plant's current energy reserves. and the entire response is weighted by accumulated light history. Consistent directional light produces deeper commitment than intermittent exposure. Multiple inputs, internal state assessment, temporal integration, cost-benefit analysis, adaptive output. That's not a reflex. That's a strategy, running continuously, updated in real time, on a windowsill in your living room. And the next time someone sees your plant leaning toward the window and says, "Oh, it just needs more light," you'll know that what's actually happening is one of the most sophisticated examples of brainless problem-solving in the natural world. That lean is not desperation, it's computation. If this changed how you see the psychology of your plants, subscribe. Because in the next video, we're exploring the most provocative question in plant science. Can your plant actually feel when you're sad? And the answer involves biochemistry that most people can't believe is real.
Represent the energy molecules being synthesized within the leaf's cellular network.